There were lots of fence posts, like there are around here, I suspect. To fence post. It knew my breath and knew my cheek. It was yesterday, a long time ago, when I stood alone next to any old fence post and waited. Before I knew, I was beginning a practice of listening to what stands still a long time. Today, standing any place, that yearning might come for a way in to where fence posts stay without ceasing, each one a priest of stillness. Any day this is so, on a hillside where wind trembles the grass, stands a quiet gray weathered post, crust of golden lichen glowing on the shadowed side. I'm known as the fence post poet in Boston.
What was the line that said a priest without the
Yeah, but they're each one a priest of stillness.
Oh, priest of stillness.
Yeah. Yeah, if you don't hear the line, feel free to ask me. I love that. Yeah. To where fence posts stay without ceasing, each one a priest of stillness.
Yeah.
So I'll give you one more fence post poem. This one's called Grief and Fence Posts. I felt its reach riding horseback in summer pastures, passing by the proud posts, always standing at the spot where they were set, holding the barbed wire under the wounding staples. Each post, once a tree, that stood along some creek, knows every sunrise to sunset, each moon's wax and wane, every season, every storm, the cow, the deer, the meadowlark and hawk, rattlesnake, magpie, badger, and horse. The grief in fence posts. I felt it pass into my own upright body, learn trust at the side of each post, and what I desire now, to stand, naked, seeing everything from where I am, faithful to the place. This next poem is one of those poems that comes from having carried a regret most of your life for something you did long ago that you wish you'd never done.
Just one? Just one?
Yeah. Unfortunately not. But this is only about one of them.
Okay.
It's called Horses Could Take You There. And one of the things about this poem that's relating back to Parmenides is the way the young man is carried to the other world is by horses. So it's called Horses Could Take You There. Well, the other thing you need to know about to get this poem is when I say Jamaica Way, it refers to a particular road in Boston. It's a major road down through a part of Boston called Jamaica Plain. If I could remember it, and the names of the horses, but I don't, until stuck in traffic on the Jamaica Way, and the red tail lands on a nearby limb. The horses' names start to come back. Goldie, Red, Lightning, Lucky, Blue, Babe, and Spike. The young sharpshooting I killed at the creek back then, shooting BBs again and again, the young hawk perfectly still. Sound of my mother's accordion, the only thing that soothed. If I'd ever believed in a God, this would be the time to unfold it. Travel to the other world was possible according to Parmenides. Horses could take you there. So quiet, the way Spike loped across the summer pasture. So I'm going to read one poem that's come since the book came out, because Spike started talking to me in the shower one day. So I wrote a poem to Spike. It was one of my dear horses when I was a young man. And this poem is in two parts. But Spike, 1. I love that stumble-bum pinto. Love him like a brother, a lover. And though he stumbles too much to trust, I want to trust someone so much. I ride ride him even after he somersaults me under him, perfectly upside down, both of us startled and dizzied at once. Rising, grateful to be in one piece, I pat his neck, which trembles like my hand, lift myself into the saddle, and we go on. Spike's breath on my cheek at the top of the hill, his nose as soft as the silk around my pillowcase that I gather into my small hand at night, soft like the touch of dust on a cow path. 2. When we chase the yearling colts, my dad and me, silent, me knowing he wants me different, wants me to ride faster, to not hold back when they get close to the gate, watch them slip away again, race back to the far corner of the pasture, a mile the other way. I, inside my mother's fear, not in my father's abandon. The next time they race ahead of us, a half-mile to go and crowding my side, I urge Spike along, but hold back on the reins, eyes scanning for hoof-sized prairie dog holes, watching Spike's feet fly over the ground. Then, at some moment I haven't planned, inside me, that thread back to the house and her fear breaks. I let the reins go loose, give Spike a nudge with my feet. Inside my virgin head, I hear, fuck it, let's go, I can die. And the lust inside abandon takes me. That sound of hoofbeats, like thunder, like love. Spike and me nudging up against them on our side, my dad and me yipping as we gallop. That's transformation of some kind. You had to somehow make it out of your mother's world into your father's world as a young cowboy in a ranch. More boy than cowboy. But anyway, that's how I did it. At least that day. So, next little piece from Parmenides in the book. She devised Eros as the very first of all the gods. Interesting notion. She devised Eros as the very first of all the gods. Who she is a really good question. I'll just read one poem from this section. It's called Eden. Blue wind shaped the first guitar, made it ocean, made it swimming tigers, made it shine light to that face only my hands could find. Made it yellow the edges of old albums, made it cosmos, made it chicken house, windmill, and water tank holding. Made me long for the sea, dive deep, my eyes find bright coral glowing. Made grass blow under the east wind. Brought sound spilling from every tongue over lips, full kissed, when God touched the tree, touched me, touched you. Carved words touched our hips to dance, spun our blood into new marrow, called it love, called it hawk, called it turtle, called it mud, called it here, called you mine, called me yours, called everything, until calling stuttered our lips to silence, to kiss, to lie still, to hold tight, to let this go. So I'll give you a little flavor of the people I grew up with. This poem is called My Father's Trips to Town. My father was sort of an alcoholic who controlled his alcoholism and his workaholism. My father's trips to town. What a shy gentleman he was. In the field, working. In the church, silent, unwilling to sing. And in the bank, head bowed, bargaining with only the promise of harvest. Yet, in the bar, loosened by liquor. Dice shaking, dare taking, beyond his reach. At last, returning home after dark, he walked alone, scolded to the barn to milk the burdened cow, who lashed him in his shame with her piss-wet tail as he sat cursing on the three-legged milking stool. You can kind of guess who did the cursing. It was my mother. So this poem is called Farm. My mother stood at her kitchen window, facing north and wringing her hands, heavy like iron that I thought I could unwind her gnarl of worry. When my father fixed fence along the creek, he expected supper. She unwound her worried hands to make it, a mix of potatoes, meat, and sorrow. My father ate everything except the sorrow. My brother and I divided it. He, being older, took the smaller share. Evening came. I walked to the barn to gather the cows, to smell the water in the cattle tank, to imagine I was a fin on the windmill, a splinter on the fence post holding the gate. That gate was probably my ticket out of there. So, the next little piece from Parmenides is fascinating to me, and I love reading it. It's very short. He says, all is full at once of light and hidden night. All is full at once of light and hidden night. So, how we doing? You got room for a couple more? Yeah. So, since you haven't had any blizzards down here, and we've had more than our share in Boston, I'll read this one called After a Blizzard. In this arc of snow, now hanging over the creek bank in the windless air, a stillness so silent and at rest, I could not hold it. For there was my faithless looking to find a blemish in the clean edge, or the hint of a dark secret under the curved lip of perfection. When it wasn't to be found, I couldn't help the mitten touch to disturb the virgin snow, bring it too into the fallen place I knew, while what I longed for was just to breathe, kneel down, and never move again. Are you up for a prose poem, sort of a longish prose poem? This poem is in the section which comes after Parmenides saying, "Here I end my trustworthy account and thought concerning truth. From here on, learn the opinions of mortals." Parmenides is always a little bit confusing or bewildering, which is what I discovered as part of the beauty of his poem, is he didn't ever let you know what you ought to be thinking. The other thing, just to introduce this sort of longish prose poem, is I was raised among the Norwegian Lutherans, and they were a pretty stark bunch. Homesteaders, the prairie, Norwegian and Lutheran. I mean, that's a pretty. So this poem is called Ink and Sin, and it comes out of the experience I had. For many years I wrote every morning with a fountain pen, and I loved them. And one morning I was writing with this new fountain pen, and it took me off into memories of my grandmother when I was really little. Ink and Sin. This morning, I sit down with my new fountain pen, fill it carefully from the reservoir at the side of the bottle, slowly replace the lid and screw it tight. Then I begin to write across the empty page. So smooth, this indelible black ink flows into words. And so smooth, My memory slides back to when I was little, and Grandma wrote letters back home to Missouri with fountain pens that filled from ink bottles I loved to touch, to watch the dark body of ink sway inside the smooth glass walls with the slightest wobble. Each tilt aroused the sly fear of a spill I knew would make an indelible mark across her desk, her paper, the carpet, someplace everyone would see, like sin, as I was taught by my mother and the Lutherans. Grandma wasn't a Lutheran, but she had a face that could fire up a fear just like the image of hell that floated through the church pews Sunday mornings. I'd sit quiet in church, watching my mother's face go stone still, hard in the eyes, harder than a wooden pew that squeaked with a subtle yawn, or a slow turn of my head straining to see what the men were doing on the benches at the back. Crows gone to sleep, along a limb where no wind blew, heads tilting at angles of repose, shirt pockets bulging with packs of cigarettes I knew they'd light up as soon as they walked outside at the end of all the talk from the pulpit about fire and sin and the Savior's hands, receiving the awful nails for us, always for us. At my grandma's desk, I'd weigh the odds, take a careful twist to test how tight the lid was closed, then tilt the bottle slightly to watch the black body of ink climb one side, then the other, leaving for moments a thin veil of itself clinging to the inside walls of the darkened glass. Wasn't it trying to leave this glassy prison, waiting to be drawn into the small barrel of the green or the red pen, waiting to become a letter of the alphabet, a word in one of Grandma's sentences, then to dry and lie still across the crisp white paper from her thick tablet and be folded inside an envelope with a 3-cent stamp? She'd send me off to the post office, across the street at the end of her block, then across the other street to the red brick building with U.S. Post Office etched in the stone lintel over the door. Once inside, another world shone off the murals of Frederick Remington, off the shiny marble floor, and off the walls where wanted posters showed tough faces of people I knew had sinned, spilled blood maybe, like ink, across someone's shirt, and now their face was on the wall for all to see. I'd shiver at the thought that my face could appear there, hold my breath as I slid past the bulletin board and over to the mail slot, where I'd read 3 times to make sure it was the one Grandma had shown me where letters were supposed to go. Finally, I let it fall from my hand, wondering if I'd done it right. When I was sure I'd done nothing wrong, my mind would fly off into its wondering about that ink now stilled onto Grandma's letter with its job of saying something to someone far off in Missouri who I'd never met, but knew was waiting to hear how we were doing. I longed for a job so clear, so clean, so done now that no sin could happen by mistake by my hand or mine, which still moved, like the ink in the bottle, and anything was waiting to happen in this world where a sin could put your face on one of those posters